Robin, what happened in the restroom of the Johannesburg airport?
It's a great question to start off with, Chris. And first of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. Years ago, I was traveling and to do a leadership event in South Africa, one of my first favorite countries in the world. And as I walked in, I heard this booming voice say, "Welcome to my office." And I looked over and I saw this man and he said, "Welcome to my office." I looked around and this restroom was flawless. It was perfect. And I said to this, I saw it was the janitor. And so I couldn't miss the opportunity to ask him a few questions and interview him, because in this world where so many people maybe forget that there's great dignity in our labor and we can grow so much in our work. This man did his work like Picasso painted. And he just told me, he goes, I feel like I'm an ambassador to South Africa, and everyone who comes in here, I can have an influence on them, and my job is an important job to me. And he had such pride in it. So that was the story of the Johannesburg men's room janitor.
Do you think an underlying thing there is passion? Someone having passion about what they're doing? It doesn't really matter what they're doing, but they just want to be the best at it?
I think that's part of it. I think also it comes down to respect. I think it's the old idea, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And so even if it was Martin Luther King Jr. who said, even if you're a street sweeper, sweep like all in a way that all the gods in heaven will say, there goes the greatest street sweeper who ever lived. And so I think if you do your work at mastery and with dignity and excellence, even if no one, and it's not a very popular idea, but even if no one is watching, you know, and the best part of you knows. And there's something to be said for that, because ultimately you've got to like yourself and respect yourself when your head hits the pillow every night. And so even if you're anonymously doing great work, the reward is your honor. And so I think he just respected himself. I think he was a quiet person who saw his work could give him dignity and joy.
Do you think that being the best at something in anything, for most cases, requires a level of challenge, and perhaps when it comes to being respected in terms of the way we view ourselves, you kind of need to go through some form of challenge and some form of kind of journey that's not smooth sailing? And if you are a janitor, it's okay, but being the best at it and making sure that everything's perfect, it still requires a level of effort and challenge to go through that, which means you can still be fulfilled and respected when doing something like that?
Yeah, I think pressure has a bad reputation. If you look at the great monuments, if you look at the great artists, if you look at the great chefs, if you look at the great business titans, these people understand that the problem is not pressure. The problem is we don't recover against pressure. So challenge and pressure are the things that cause us to do really great things.
Yeah. Do you feel like the lacking of maybe perspective is a thing that makes people not be able to enjoy what they do? If you look at that janitor, for example, someone might look at that and go, I can't comprehend being a janitor. How is he so happy? And maybe that's coming from someone doing something completely different. But I wonder what makes someone be a janitor that can actually respect themselves. Because a lot of people might be like, that's bottom of the barrel. That's the worst thing you can do. For someone in that space to be able to actually respect himself, I wonder what stems upstream from that. Like, why can he have the ability to respect himself, even doing something deemed to be not very respectable?
It's a great question. I think your philosophy of life is really important. And so one person could be a janitor and fall into the trap of thinking, I can't make a difference. And then here you have this person in Johannesburg thinking like he's doing the most important job in the world. And I think that comes down to our philosophy. In my work, I teach philosophy as well as methodology. Philosophy is, what are the big ideas or what are the values that are most important to you? How will you wish you will have lived on the last hour of your last day? That's philosophy. And he just had an approach and a philosophy where I think he saw that his work had meaning. And I think the point for all your viewers and listeners is I would encourage you very humbly, take the time to figure out your philosophy. You mentioned before on camera, you found some time to go into a forest, into a log cabin. To me, that really speaks to me very deeply in this world where things are so busy. There's so much noise, we miss the signal. And I think getting away from the world, I almost think silence is a new superpower. And getting away from this world where we can actually think. Think about your philosophy. Think about what you want to stand for in the world. Think about what projects you want to push out into the world that light you up and that will light up the world. So you use the word perspective. I would say yes, and I would also say the word philosophy. Think about your philosophy or your approach to life. Write it down. I love journaling, and I'll do game charts where I deconstruct my philosophy. Like OAD, an obsessive attention to detail, family first, all the different elements. And then I look at it and I study it, and it's almost like a written meditation. And I think the more you can understand the philosophy that feels true to you, and then go out into this messy world where a lot of people watch what everyone else does, and that's the cue on how to behave. Say, here's my philosophy and how I want to live, and then go out there and do it. I think that's one of the ways to live a great life. Was it Shakespeare who said, "To thine own self be true"?
The silence is key there. And is that why mornings are so important for you, and that morning routine, because it's maybe the most silent at that time?
Yeah, so for many years, I was getting up at 5 a.m. And as you know, I've written the 5 a.m. Club, which has helped millions of people install a world-class morning routine. But about 2 years ago, I started getting up at 4 a.m. And, I say this a little tongue-in-cheek, but 4 a.m. is the new 5 a.m. And the reason I say it is I was recently in the Himalayas, and I learned about this term, and it's called Brahmamurta, and it's from 4 to 6 in the morning. And it's the sages and the sadhus believe it's a time that's very, very still and very, very quiet. And so they do their holy reading at that time, and they do their meditation at that time, and they do their prayer at that time. And so I love getting up, whether it's 4, 5, or maybe even 6, but it's not only that the world is asleep, I think it's almost like the universe is asleep. And there's some good science behind it. When we sleep, the brain has a mechanism that washes the brain. And so we wake up and we've let go of the residue from the day before. And I do believe your meditations are deeper. Your reflections are deeper. Your journaling is deeper. If you read Meditations of Marcus Aurelius or whatever the book might be, I think it will go deeper into your mindset and into your soul. And so 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock to me is very sacred. And again, it could be 5, it could be 6 for anyone who's listening. Do what's right for you. Do what feels true to you. But like I say, over the past 2 years, my instinct has encouraged me to get up at 4, and it's very, very still. And I go through a process from 4 to about 5 called MVP, meditation, visualization, and prayer. And that has been profound in my personal growth.
Visualization, meaning the future, is what you're visualizing, because it's obviously not yet happened. Do you do any reflection of the past in that time in the mornings? Because one of the quotes you said is, "Our past is not a prison to be chained in. Our past is a school to learn from."
Sure. My default is the future. And I don't spend a lot of time in the past, except when I'm struggling. So if I've gone through, like all of us, we've gone through our difficulties in life. And when I'm going through a difficult time, then it's pretty easy to get stuck and ruminate, and it's a messy process trying to get out of a difficult time. But usually I'm thinking about the future. So in my visualizations, I'm often thinking about what I want to stand for, the difference that I want to make, what my ideal life looks like, because I think clarity breeds mastery. And I believe vague thinking leads to vague performance. And so whether it's in business, whether it's in the arts, whether it's in your personal life, the more you can get great clarity on what it is you want to create. Let's go to some science. The reticular activating system of the brain can be, let's call it, programmed to search your environment for what it is that you've trained it to look for. And so by scripting out what you want or envisioning what you want through visualization or speaking words of what you wish to see in your environment, then quote unquote, almost magically, you're going to spot those things in your environment or spot all of these opportunities.
Yeah, this clarity piece is interesting, and it's something I've been thinking about a lot. I actually think that it's one thing I'm being challenged with at the moment is giving myself permission to do a certain thing. For example, like give myself permission to read for an hour because I feel like there's better things I should be doing. And what I was thinking and reflecting on yesterday actually is this idea that perhaps there's a lack of clarity, which is not giving me certainty that I can do that thing. Like, for example, I know that being a podcaster, right? One of the key things I need to be doing is leveling up me and learning more and being introspective and understanding myself a lot more, because the more I can do that, the more I can show up for these conversations. But perhaps because maybe things like business and other things in life are consuming my mind and maybe creating a bit of fog, I'm not giving myself permission to do those things. But it's one of those things where you go, those acts of slowing down and actually visualizing and spending that time that's not quantifiably moving the needle right now is actually the thing that will move the needle. Do you think it's a common thing for people kind of not allowing them to give themselves permission to do those morning routines and spend that time on themselves?
I think what you're speaking of, I suggest is two things. I think it's not giving oneself permission, because our society says visualizing or journaling or meditating or reading or walking in the woods, those things, especially in a hustle and grind culture, those things, as you say, are not quantifiable, but they're a waste of time. And we've fallen into this trap, and it's a core belief system for a lot of people. If I'm not doing, I'm not enough. Makes me think of what Gandhi said. He said, today I have a very busy day ahead. I better meditate 6 hours rather than 3 hours, or something to that effect. And right?
I love that.
Right. And so I think we don't give ourselves permission because we don't want to miss out. And we think that if we're not doing, we're going to miss out. But I think it even goes deeper than that. I think a lot of us don't value and prioritize time for ourselves. But income and impact always reflects self-identity. We will never rise any higher in terms of our impact or influence in the world, the example we set for others, the beauty we push into the world. We will never rise any higher than who we are. So as we do the contrarian move of going to a log cabin once in a while, or your log cabin could be in your flat, but as we go within, and we can talk about the tools, but as we build intimacy with our most powerful nature, as we really find out how powerful and strong and wise and unkillable and brilliant we are, and this is not platitude, as we realize our best selves through the tools we can talk about, what happens? We go out in the world and we ask for the order we were too scared to ask for. We go out in the world and we paint a masterwork that we were resisting painting because we thought it's so disruptive and different from everyone else. People would laugh. As we build intimacy with our truest, most powerful, bravest, most brilliant selves, we're more loving. And so the world replies with love. People are just nicer to us and kinder to us. So the best work, I mean, I've been at this for, it's year 33 or year 34. And personally, on my own journey, the deeper I go within myself in prayer, meditation, healing, spiritual work, cognitive work, the deeper I go, it seems like it's not work, but it's the most quote unquote productive work I could ever do, because then I'm working less and achieving more. And I'm not only working less to achieve more, but what I'm doing in my work is much more a reflection of my inner growth.
When you say intimacy, do you think that intimate relationship with self, or even just intimacy as a whole, a key component of that is trust? Because maybe when you're being intimate, it's allowing yourself to be intimate, because if you don't have the trust, then your kind of guard can be up and you can kind of repel all the intimacy. Would you say a key thing to intimacy is trust?
For sure. And I think we're singing from the same songbook. I would actually say it's safe. And I think it's really smart to use the modalities of personal growth that are right for you, but find a way to feel safer in the world. And I don't hear that term used that much, but I think if we could be more safe in the world, we would take down our mask and we would be nicer to our brothers and sisters out on the street. If we would feel safer in the world, we could say, my instinct says I should create this new project entrepreneurially, let's say, or socially. And we would trust because we feel more safe. And I think a lot of us, the world is a messy place right now, and a lot of us have been hurt or betrayed or disappointed. I think every human being. And if we don't learn how to move through that and release it and actually turn the difficulty into growth, then we're carrying what I called in one of my books, the Everyday Hero Manifesto, the field of hurt. We pick up all of this wounding and it's subconscious and it's like our shadow side and it's the great puppet master. It's sabotaging everything that we're doing and we blame it on, there's not enough opportunities in the world or there's not enough nice people in the world, but we are our own enemy. So I think part of really great personal development work would be, yes, building trust by being more safe in the world.
Yeah, this intimacy piece is fascinating. Like building this trust, I'm trying to apply it now to the people in our life as well, right? Perhaps true intimacy is your ability to be who you feel in here and show up in that way. Because if you can show up as a full picture of yourself to the people around you and you feel safe enough to be able to do so. So you're not restricting yourself, you're not holding back, you're giving them what you're feeling. That's true intimacy with someone else as well. There's no gap between who you are and how you're showing up, because the thing that's allowing you to do that is that trust with the person. Do you think that the people around us, it's really important that we can have the ability to be intimate with them, and not intimate in the sense of touching, more in the sense of energetically and I guess emotionally, we can be intimate with these people around us, and perhaps something that can hold us back a lot. I know one of the quotes you said is, you can change the world or you can be around energy vampires, but you can't do both. Do you think a challenge is people not feeling safe and intimate and ability to be intimate with people around them, and perhaps the people around them are energy drainers or energy vampires, as you reference, and that's holding them back?
I think there's 2 points there. And the first is who our circle influences our energy and our performance and our creativity. And I think a great move for anyone is doing a social circle evaluation and asking yourself, who is bringing me down? Who are the energy vampires? Who are the dream stealers in my life? And those are the people, every time you get a great idea, every time you want to do something, every time you're enthusiastic about something, you share it with them. And almost like, I don't know, Chris, if you've experienced people like this, but you share something and I think it's almost like a subconscious default. But that won't work because of whatever, or they'll try to overdo you. And I think here's the litmus point. There are some people in our lives, every time we're with them, they just make us feel bad. And I would say to all your viewers from around the world, you deserve better. And so start the process of saying goodbye to those people. And then people always say, well, what if it's my mother or my best friend? I'd say use the reason, season, lifetime tool. People come into our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. I would also say practice selective association. Maybe it's don't see them every day, see them once a month. And then I think the second thing you're speaking about is when should we be vulnerable? And I think it depends on the context. Like my life partner, Elle, that's the place where I'm going to be most vulnerable. And there's other contexts where I'm not going to be. I mean, there's some people who talk about you be vulnerable every place that you go, and that's fine if that's how they want to live their lives. For me, it depends on the context, and I don't think it's not being authentic. I just think that when you're in your home, there's a certain level of vulnerability, and then in work, there's a different level of vulnerability. And for me, I think it's important. Context is really important. And I would say one thing, because as an artist, and I'm not only a painter, but I'm a writer, I go very vulnerable in my books. My latest book is The Wealth Money Can't Buy. It took me over a year of my life to write. I just went all into that book. But one of the things I tried to do was to write in a very vulnerable, open, intimate way, where it was almost like I'm with the reader. We're sitting at a fireplace. I'm mentoring them through this model I've been teaching for 20 years, the 8 forms of wealth, and we can get into it because money is only one form of wealth. And when you discover the 7 other forms and you bring them into your life, you start to feel rich without even having a lot of money. And so when I write and when I paint, it's very raw and it's very intimate. And it was Marshall McLuhan, I believe, who said that which is most personal is most universal. So I would say for anyone who's creative, and we're all creative, be as intimate as possible on the canvas, so to speak, or in the book, because what you write about from a personal place is very universal.
What does painting do for you?
It's one of the few places where I can go into my little studio in South Africa and my mind shuts down for 4 or 5 hours. It's one of the few places where I can just go in a flow state and just get lost. And I just have a deep need to paint. And so it's not only a meditation, but it's cathartic. I think there's a lot of healing when I paint. And it's a great form of creative expression for me, just putting the paint on the canvas. I mean, here we're in amazing London, and you and Elliot have this incredible place you found for us, so I'm grateful for that. The energy in here is amazing. Last night I saw the Jenny Saville exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery, and I just being around painters, being around great art, I find it deeply, deeply inspiring.
So it's kind of like a safe space for you. It's an outlet. You can kind of just go there and know that I don't need to be anywhere else, and this is really fueling the soul in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think people need to have an outlet like that? Do you think it's quite powerful for people to find their version of painting in their life?
Oh, it's mission essential. And I would say that we were all artists before the world trained us to be adults. And if I could say that again, because hopefully it'll be really valuable for all your listeners and viewers, we were all artists before the world trained us to be adults. We all had a sparkle in our eye when we were little kids. We all loved to paint on walls and sing our song. I mean, there's a poem Dad used to mention to us and wrote on a little script, and he hung it to our refrigerator. And it said, spring is past, summer has gone, and winter is here. And the song I meant to sing remains unsung, for I've spent my days stringing and unstringing my instrument. And that was, I believe, written by a man who had a great song within him, but he just got busy with the mortgage and the responsibilities and the bills and social media, and he forgot to sing his song, the great song his life was meant to be. And I really believe everyone alive today has this great song within them. And I think part of our mission in life is to find what that song is, whether it's to build a tech company, whether it's to build a great family, whether it's to start a shop, whether it's to be a great chef, whether it's to be a top podcaster. I think we come alive when we find our song, or maybe when we're in pursuit of our song. And so I think, yes, we all need to find our form of painting, a place where we can express our truest selves. I think we need to find our painting because also it will allow us to get away from the world and go into flow state. And I think for some it's meditation, for some it's gardening, for some it's cooking. But we live in a world where I see so many, I'm not judging, I'm just reporting, but I see so many people, they're not present. And they're just in a trance and they're overwhelmed. And so I think it's so important to find some enthusiasm that could be become your profession, but some enthusiasm where when you do it, you just get lost and everything feels okay. And going back to the latest book, The Wealth Money Can't Buy, there are so many people. I mentor billionaires and professional athletes and members of royalty. I've done so for over 25 years. And so many of these people have done what society says you should do to be happy. They've made a lot of money. They've got all these material things. And they are some of the emptiest people I've ever met. But when you find something that is your bliss, something that brings you joy, you find a happiness that goes beyond any form of material wealth. And I think, that's what I'm trying to bring to people in The Wealth Money Can't Buy. It's like there are other forms of wealth. And I just had this conversation with an 80-year-old London cab driver as I came over here. That was joy. That brings me more joy than any amount of money could bring me. We talked about, he's 80 years old. He said, I said, what's your secret? He goes, there's the electric chair and then there's the armchair. I've avoided the armchair. I love to work. It's kept me young. My friends who retired are gone. And so I think there are other forms of wealth that money can't buy, and painting does that. And I would encourage everyone, find your own form of painting.
Why do you think people obsess over money and make it their life's mission and realize that it doesn't fulfill them? Because I feel like it's one of those weird balances where the people that haven't made money, I struggle to take them seriously because I like the people that have gone from A to B and realized that it's like that whole alchemist story, right? Of like actually the journey to getting there. And I would hate to share a message that makes people not embark on the journey in the first place. And I do love hearing people get to B and realize that it's not the whole part. But why do you think people strive towards the money and obsess over that so much in their life?
Well, just to reply to what you said, you say, if I heard you correctly, Chris, I like people who are on a journey, but why does that journey, and I'm just curious, why does that journey have to be a journey of money? And I think we're on the same page, but I don't think that journey has to be a journey of building a company or having a lot of money. What if that person we see sitting in a park is on a journey? It might not be a journey of building financial wealth or business, but who knows what journey that person sitting in a park feeding pigeons has been on? They could be on the most profound spiritual journey just by sitting in that park every day. So I would add to our conversation, there are different forms of journeys. And some journeys are building a multi-billion-dollar company, and some journeys are sitting home alone, healing invisibly. And I think those are equally valuable. And then I'd say, to answer your question, why do so many people chase money and social media likes and all that kind of thing? It's societal programming. And we are tribal and we are neurologically hardwired to do what the tribe is doing. So we look around, we see the people being celebrated, and we say, I guess that's what we should be doing. And I guess that's the metric of success. And it's been programmed into us since we've been 10 years old. Maybe our parents or teachers or our peers or the media. Oh, look at that person. He's driving a Ferrari. Be like, oh, what a success. Or she's like, oh, what a success. And so we get this hypnotic, we get this indoctrination process where we say, I guess this is what we need to do to find happiness. And yet how many people have got those things and then it's a drug of choice. They just want the next thing.
Mm. You've got a quote, and it absolutely blew my mind when reading it. And I love it. I think it ties in perfectly to this. Don't spend the best days of your life climbing a mountain only to realize when it's too late that you've climbed the wrong one. Wasting a life is a tragic mistake. I just kind of hear that and I go, perhaps the societal programming is making us embark on a journey that we don't deep down actually want. But then by the time we realize that, it's too late.
I think it's true. I think for a lot of people, well, I don't think it's ever too late. You know, you've made me think about something, and even if on the last hour of your last day, confronted with your mortality, wondering what's on the other side, you quickly think over your life and maybe realize, I should have done some things differently. I think there's power and awakening in that. But I believe it's really easy to be busy being busy, and I think it's really easy to live your life like a 5-alarm fire versus what I do my best to do. And I'm certainly no guru and I'm just an ordinary person, but each day I try to get up early because it's quiet and just have some reflection time and go through my morning routine. And I think that's the value of the 5 a.m. club. It's helped so many millions of people because it's difficult for the first 66 days. And then University College London found that it takes about 66 days to wire in a new habit to what researchers call automaticity. And so after 66 days of practice and getting up at 5 a.m., it becomes easier to get up at 5 a.m. than not get up at 5 a.m. But I just find that early morning time allows me to think. It's not only MVP, meditation, visualization, and prayer, but I love to write in my journal. And just to bring some tactics to your viewers, there's a tool I use fairly often. It's called the 5-question morning maximizer that I write about. Would you like me to get into it?
Yeah, I've heard it. It's great.
Okay, so it's 5 questions. The first question is, what am I grateful for? We know that gratitude is the antidote to fear. Second question is, where am I winning? That's powerful because the brain has a negativity bias. So it forces us to focus on where we're making micro wins. It's the question of hope and momentum. The third question is a spiritual question and a healing question. What will I let go of today? So it could be bringing forgiveness to someone or letting go of some resentment or maybe jealousy. You write a paragraph, very healing. Fourth question is, what does my ideal day ahead look like? So this gives you, that's the intentionality question. It gives you a script for the day. And the fifth question is the KDC question, the keep death close question. What needs to be said at the end? And so each morning while the world is asleep, you're drinking your tea or your coffee, you've got some nice music playing, but you confront your death. Each morning, it's a great ritual, and it gives you this intimacy with your mortality because you go, what needs to be said about me when I'm no longer here? And you write a paragraph or two about what your family will say and your colleagues will say, and then you go out in the world, and at a conscious level or even a subconscious level, you've connected with your mountaintop, and you can live in a much more deliberate way.
Are you doing that every morning?
Not every morning. Sometimes I just write about how I feel. Sometimes I write about what I'm learning. Sometimes I write about what I had for dinner the night before. Yeah, I have different forms of journaling, different prompts.
I'm sensing a key thing about all of this practice is being in tune with yourself and what you truly want, deep down what your soul is desiring. Because all of these things are great. Running a company is still not, it's not like, let's not make money if that's what you want to do. But being aware of what's serving you and what's not, and being able to be self-reflective, to look within and assess all of the outside world of what's being presented to us, what is kind of rubbing off on us, what's affecting us positively, negatively, and then being able to use that information, which you gain through the solitude and through the silence, It's removing all of the noise is where you can gain that clarity on all these things. And then with that information that you've gained through the silence, then you can then choose what to do with it. It's like without having this ability to stop and be here and be present and just listen to what's coming in, you will never be able to know and have a bit of a filter of what's serving you and what's not. And then perhaps people just kind of get this overarching feeling of emptiness or overarching feeling of, I don't know what's wrong, but I just don't really feel my best. And the problem there is probably just an inability to kind of sit with their own thoughts and feel and just experience whatever they're feeling. Maybe they're suppressing that ability to do that.
Yeah, I think that's part of it for sure. I think also making some time or being on a journey of self-development is also healing. It's letting go of all you've picked up that no longer serves you, whether it's your mindset, heart set, health set, and soul set. In the 5M Club, I have a model called the 4 Interior Empires. So many people talk about mindset. I think you want to work on your mindset, your beliefs, very important, but also your heart set with it, which is your emotionality, your health set, which is your physicality, and your soul set, which is your spirituality. So you want to work on those 4 elements as well. Also, I wanted to say, I'm not saying money is not important. And I know a lot of people who follow you are entrepreneurs, and I'm an entrepreneur myself. In the Wealth Money Can't Buy, the 8 forms of wealth, one of them is money. I mean, it provides freedom and allows you to do amazing things for your family and people who are in need. So I didn't mean to suggest in any way that money's not important. I just think there's an over prioritization of it. And also I think there's a lot of messaging, which is when you have a lot, you're going to feel better. But the old Zen proverb reminds us, wherever you go, there you are. And so I've talked to so many people, they thought if I got to this level, I would wake up one day and I'd feel like everything was great. And that day came because they had a liquidity event and they felt exactly the way they did. And I think that's a useful concept.
Yeah, I agree. I spoke with someone, the episode's actually coming out tomorrow, and he was explaining how money is the only objective measure of success. The rest is subjective. And he was explaining that you can base all your success off all these other metrics, but they're all subjective. He's like, the only objective measure of success is financial. And more specifically, he was explaining financial net worth being the one that's quantifiable. And while maybe if we unpack it, that makes sense, the rest are subjective. But my challenge is why does it need to be objective? Like, why does success need to be black and white, objective, see it on a paper with some numbers? Like, surely it being subjective is the best part about success. It doesn't need to be this one thing, and we can have all different things that light us up, and based on our experiences and how we've kind of formed our version of life can help dictate how success is for us. I think ultimately being able to look within and choose the things that serve us and not just climb a ladder for the sake of climbing a ladder, and be aware of going, okay, yeah, money is important. We're all striving towards it. It is great having money. We can't disregard this. It's awesome. Especially if we're operating in this society where the main commodity that we're transacting is money to unlock all the things that we want. So it's not about disregarding it, but I do think there is a level where no more money that you make will impact your life anymore to much degree. I mean, maybe if you're in America, you can buy a jet or something, but realistically, like, you get past a certain point and the money doesn't really impact your life. So I think you need to seek for something outside of financial in order to have that fulfillment, have that joy in your life, or it is probably a slippery slope because you're chasing something that decreases in value the more you obtain it. Because the more you obtain it after a certain level, the less utility it has.
Well, I'd say a few things. Very interesting what you say. When you said, Chris, We need money because it's what we're transacting in. I hear you. And yet I'd also very humbly offer, I think what we're really transacting in is humanity in business. Money is a reflection of the value rendered to the marketplace. And I think if an entrepreneur, if their main obsession is money, I don't know if they're ever going to win. But if their obsession is what is a huge problem that people are dealing with, and how can I offer the most value to solve that problem? And if deep in your soul, that's where you're coming from, that's how you win. And then someone would say, Robin, that sounds very kumbaya. Can we hold hands? And, I just finished rereading Steve Jobs' wonderful biography by Walter Isaacson. And Steve Jobs did not care about money. He cared about beauty. And his magic was he married the humanities and great taste and a love of beauty and design with technology. I had someone who came to one of my leadership events and they said, you mentioned Steve Jobs. I met Steve 6 weeks before he passed away. I walked into his house. I went into his family room. He didn't want to talk about his illness. He was asking about the technology. I think it was the iPhone. This little piece, how's this working? How's that going? He was just obsessed with pushing beautiful things that would make people's lives richer out into the world. When he was a billionaire, he still lived in a pretty small house and didn't have much furniture. So what I'm trying to say is, I don't know if money is what we transact in business. Like I hear what you're saying technically, but I think what we transact in is relationships. And I believe the one who serves the most people wins. And it's not only with money, it's even in terms of how you feel. And then I wanted to ask you, can I ask you a question? Yeah. So what would be the one thing in your life right now you'd like to see more of in your life?
I would say more calm. So I would want my mind to be less of a professional plate spinner, of just spinning a bunch of different plates, thinking that I can handle it. When in reality, I think more calm in my mind of like aligned focus is probably something I want to see more of in my life. I think my life's changed a lot over the past couple of years. I've financially done quite well comparatively to how much I've ever done before. Career-wise, it's progressed quite a lot. I'm in the best shape I've ever been in my life physically. I would say that I feel very good about the progression of where I'm heading. But what I would also say is I seem to go through this cycle of filling my plates too much, and then I go, I need to consolidate this. This is too much. Let's cull this out. And I align and I lean down and get really clear on the focus. And then I see results. But then when I start getting all these results, I get presented with so many more opportunities because I'm making noise. So then I say yes to too many, and then I fill it up again, and I keep wanting to fill my plate. So I'd say the big thing that I want in my life is probably a bit more calm and ability to give myself permission to just not be constantly go, go, go.
It's really interesting. I think we all face that challenge. Lots of opportunities, lots of shiny toys, lots of things to do. And whenever I get off track by taking on too much, what helps me, and hope maybe it'll help you, but I always think of Michelangelo. He spent 4 years working on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. And it's sort of a lost art or a lost way of thinking. But I do try to be a minimalist versus a maximalist. And I have a lot of work to do on it. But just thinking about one masterwork every few years rather than lots of things all the time And Steve Jobs learned about that when he was at Pixar. He saw that they did Toy Story. They had a protocol where they would spend 3 years on one animated film, 3 years on Toy Story. So they went all in, and then 3 years on the next thing. And then when he came back to Apple in the late 1990s, that's what he did. He had that famous meeting where he had all of the products that Apple put out there on one table, and he focused, and he said, we're just going to focus on this. And it was the the iMac for 3 years. And then what was it? The iPod, I believe. And then it was
the iPhone,
maybe the iPad, and then the iPhone. And I think that's maybe more minimalism, less maximalism for all of us. We're all in the same boat, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously when you're looking at teams like that, they've got a bunch of resources working on specific tasks. So if you were to break it down, it's one massive objective, but then within that, they have different groups of people working on specific things and their focus is aligned. Perhaps a result of having probably lack of resources in terms of hands on deck, working on the things I'm trying to achieve, maybe just overextending myself a little bit. What about creativity, and how important do you think using your imagination and being creative is when it comes to life and I guess fulfillment?
Massively. It's massively creative. And you don't have to be an artist or a chef to be creative. You can be a coder and be creative. You can be a barista and be creative. You can be at home and be creative. But I think we do have an artist's soul within us, and we reconnect with the brightest and the most joyful part of us when we do our paint, whatever our paintings look like. So writing in a journal is very powerful for expressing creativity. Like I suggested, when I'm in a city, I love going to the art gallery. And when I come to London, I love going to the Tate Modern and sitting in the Rothko room. It's this room where I think there's 7 or 8 paintings. And there's a great story behind it. He was commissioned, I believe, in the 50s to do some paintings for the Seagram building in New York. And the restaurant was the Four Seasons restaurant. And so he spent 2 years creating these massive scale paintings. And then pretty close to when he was ready to give the paintings, he was paid $1 million at that time. He said to his wife, let's go have dinner and see what this restaurant is like. And after the dinner, he said to his wife, he goes, I would never allow the people who eat this kind of food and pay this kind of money view my paintings. And so he called the commissioning company or whatever, and he said, here's your money back, and I'm taking my paintings back. And he gifted them to the Tate Modern. And so there's these 7 or 8 paintings sitting in a room, and they're absolutely mesmerizing. So all I'm saying is we need to be creative. I think we come alive when we're creative. I think a lot of us have forgotten to explore our creativity. You can do it in a journal. You can also go to an art gallery and just commune with the masters, spend time with Picasso, and be open to their energy and let a little bit of their stardust and their dangerousness rub off on you. I mean, I remember being in the Picasso Museum in Barcelona, and there was a sign on the wall, and it said people were disturbed by the genius of Picasso. And I think we all need a little bit more quote unquote danger in our lives by being around some super creative people.
Do you think creativity creates more joy in your life as well? Because there's a great story you were explaining about 2 people in a hospital, one looking out a window. Does that story ring a bell?
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to share that? And I feel like that ties really well into someone that's being so creative in as low as the time as it could possibly get.
Sure. I think that was in the Everyday Hero Manifesto. And
I believe it was I was reading it in the Lessons from the Monk Who Sold His Ferrari.
Lessons from the Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. So the story is there were two people in a hospital room. One was next to the window. The one who was away from the window missed home. He missed the outside world. So his new friends each day would narrate what he saw looking outside the window. Oh, today there's all this traffic going by. Oh my goodness, there's a couple in love. They're all holding hands under the sunshine. Oh, today there's all these doggies and butterflies. And for weeks, this man next to the window, the patient, just shared all the beauty of the world outside and entertained his friend. The next morning, the friend woke up and looked over at his friend next to the window and saw that the bed was empty. And he heard that his friend had passed away the night before. So the hospital staff put him next to the window because he so missed seeing the outside world. And what he could see when he really looked out of the window was a brick wall. His friend had obviously not only been creative, but had been loving to entertain his new friend, the fellow patient. So I think you're right. When we're creative, we can express ourselves and become more of ourselves. But I also think creativity is an act of love. Because when we have the bravery to do our most honest work, whether that creativity is a company, whether it's code, whether it's a painting, whether it's a screenplay, when we put out what brings us joy, it brings joy to people. When I write my books, I think people feel, my readers pick up the energy. If I'm writing with an energy or an intention, I want to become famous. If I'm writing, I want this to be a New York Times bestseller, in my words, there will be an energy of ego. But if I'm writing to serve, or if I'm writing because I'm happy, because I'm writing because it's expressing my creativity, if I'm writing because I really want to uplift people, they're going to feel that energy in the words at some level.
Where does kindness play a role in this? Do you think kindness is an interesting thing, being kind to people? And if you look at that guy in the hospital bed, right, he didn't explain, because the ego would come in and be like, no, I'm just using my creativity to show you this. But there was a level of kindness from him in that hospital bed going, we're in a place that's pretty negative. The energy in a hospital, if you ever walk in a hospital, it's not a very nice energy. There's all these people dying and it doesn't feel very nice being in that place. And for someone to have this optimistic, amazing creativity, there's a level of kindness that comes in that, and selflessness, where you're going, it's not nice in here, but I'm going to make it nice. And one of the quotes that you've said is, kindness, quite simply, is the rent we must pay for the space we occupy on this planet. What do you feel about kindness?
Yeah, I think that those words came from someone, not me. But what do I think about that? I think it's absolutely true. I think we are most ourselves when we're giving. I'll go to entrepreneurship. We do the best when we are servant leaders. I've worked with a lot of the Fortune 50 for many years. The best teams operate like a sports team. They care. It's let's win the championship as a team versus one superstar. I think that's what Phil Jackson, part of his magic with the Los Angeles Lakers, was he got away from each one thinking they needed to be a superstar. And he said, we're going to win. And they built a dynasty, but it's like, it's us. We're going to win this together. It's the team. And I think the best business is the team sees themselves as a unified team. They have a very clear mission, and they're really about how can we push as much value and magic out into the marketplace? Because if you become a merchant of wow, and you give your customers more value that they have any right to expect through your products and services, you build a global base of fanatical followers. As a human being, I think the one who gives the most wins. And that doesn't mean you're a doormat. People always say, well, if I'm kind, people will walk on me. And what I reply to that is they will only walk on you if you don't set boundaries to prevent them from walking on you. But I believe kindness is incredibly important, and I think it's a gift you give yourself. When you do something kind, maybe you pick up an extra coffee and you give it to someone who was at the front of the hotel, the door person, or if you just say something nice to someone in an elevator because you're not scared of being rejected. You just do kindness. I think you do something amazing for another human being, and you do something amazing for yourself.
Yeah, I see. The thing that can't be in the same sentence of kindness is ego, in a sense, because an act can look like you're being kind, but you're actually just fulfilling yourself potentially. Like in the example of a business being, I'm going to give, but the only reason I'm giving is because I know you're going to give back, in a sense. It's like kindness is probably the act of giving without expecting anything in return. Perhaps. I'm not sure. I'm just thinking about it. But true kindness and true giving is not expecting anything back. It's giving because you genuinely want to give. You can see it bettering someone else's life, and you want to do that because you want to make them and their life better. Perhaps there's this thing around like the boundaries, and getting walked over is an element that people that maybe are too altruistic at times can just be used, and it's probably a thing that a lot of people can face. You give so much, people go, okay, I can easily get from him, so I'm just going to use him. What do you think are some things that you can shed light on to help people have boundaries and not get walked over?
Well, first, I just want to reply to what you said because I thought it was so interesting. And I agree, a gift given with the intention of getting something back is not a gift, it's a trade. The second thing I would say is the Japanese have a great word called intoku, which is the art of giving in secret. I think if you give to get your name on a wing of a hospital, it's not a real gift, it's ego stroking. And then what are some ways to not being walked on? I think just speak your truth even when your voice shakes. So if you feel someone's taking advantage, you find you're paying for lunch every single time you get together with a friend, have a conversation. And no one likes conflict. No one likes the difficult conversations, but it's a huge act of self-respect to politely say what's on your mind and what's on your heart. I believe you can, and this has been such a helpful idea for me. You can say whatever you want so long as you say it with respect. You can say whatever you want so long as you say it with respect. So let's say there's that friend, they never want to pay when you go to lunch. It's, hey, I'm getting the sense I'm paying all that. You don't blame them. You speak in terms of I language. I'm feeling like I'm paying for all the lunches here, and I'd love for you to buy me this. I'd make it a bit more fair. And if you find the pattern just keeps on repeating, then you have to ask yourself, do you deserve better in a friend?
Giving in silence. You said it was was it a Japanese quote?
A Japanese word, as I understand it, it's intoku.
Intoku, giving in silence. There's something so amazing that you actually get from doing that as well. Just knowing that you did that because you wanted to, and you're not here to tell anyone about it or prove yourself that you're a giver. It's just the act of giving. Do you believe in like, what are your thoughts around energy in the world and how what you put out, you get back? Do you subscribe to messages kind of like that, in a sense of this give, and, something will just eventually come into my life?
I believe in karma.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it over my life. I think good things happen to people who do good things. And I think when you wrong someone, it's cause and effect. I think that's one of the great laws of the universe. So I believe that if you do good things, if you keep your promises, by the way, I think that's one of the great ways to change a life. If you're looking for a very simple tool, it's keep your promises. I think we live in a world where it's so easy to be loose with your promises to customers, let's say, or family members, and even more importantly, to yourself. But keeping promises builds incredible willpower, incredible self-respect. Lots of good things happen, but I think, it is very important. It is very important.
Yeah. I think it's this fulfillment piece of being able to know that you followed through on the commitments that you held, whether it's personally or externally to someone else. Just being able to show up and basically just follow through on what you are holding yourself to. I think it adds a level of respect. I'm fascinated to know about how we can have mental frames in our life when we're in things. Maybe we're stuck in situations we don't want to be in, or we're kind of living life and making decisions based on what other people are going to think, or doing things in our life that are not serving us. I'm fascinated to know mental frames of things that we can remind ourselves in those moments to be able to kind of realign. Do you speak, because you work with people all the time that are obviously potentially doing things not for them, and they're not actually fueling their soul, and they need to kind of get back aligned, get back on path. What are some of the things that you're telling these people to ponder on and think about to kind of help them get out of those places?
Great question. Well, the first thing I'd say is we all get off track, and most of us get off track every day. I was once in a plane. It was a little plane in South Africa, and the pilot said, okay, we have to keep the needle at the center, I guess, of the altimeter or whatever it was, and the wind blows us off, and then we have to bring it back on. The wind blows us off, and that's what happens to each of us every day. And that's the power of a great morning routine. It can be part of a protocol to help you reset while the world is asleep. It'll help you ground. You could journal. You could read Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. You could pray. You could simply be still. You could paint, but it grounds you in terms of what's most important. When I work with clients, questions are very powerful. So just asking the right question can be a great way to get back on track. Often I find connecting with mortality is powerful. So if you continue, just off the top of my head, if you keep living the way you're living and working the way you're working, fast forward 25 years from now, what would your life look like? Another thing I love to do is I get paint and easels, and I ask my clients to draw their ideal life 24 months from now. That gets them out of the left brain and into the right brain, and all sorts of things come up. Sometimes what I'll do with clients is we'll do a deep visualization, and the visualization could be, taking them into the Himalayas, and there's a cave, and they walk into the cave, and in the edge of the cave is this holy person, and it's them at the age of 110. And they listen for a message, and intuitively there's a message that they most need to hear to help them get back on track. And so there's lots of different ways, but I would say asking yourself good questions, free flow writing in a journal, prayer is very powerful. Working with a coach, find a coach, find a spiritual counselor. Sometimes that's one of the best ways to get back on track. I love watching great movies. So sometimes you watch a movie and it just reminds you of what's most important. And last thing I'd say is I love having conversations with old people. So if I'm on a train, I'll try to go sit next to someone as old as possible, or like that cab driver today, 80 years old. I mean, you don't want to miss asking someone who's 80 some really good questions on how they wished they would have lived.
Yeah. Who will cry when you die? It's obviously that another one of those questions, right, that you get people to ask is who will cry when you die? And I think that's such a profound frame just to go, who actually cares? And what impact am I making? Obviously, that's a question around impact. Like, people that you've made an impact on will be upset about you leaving. And so it's a cool frame. I want to commend you. Thank you so much for spending the time here. I think it's so awesome. You're one of my favorite authors in the world. And I think I really resonate with your work. I resonate with Ryan Holiday as well, with the Stoicism approaches. And I think you're one of the greatest authors to be living right now. And it's been a pleasure to sit down with you today. So I really thank you for your time.
It's super kind of you to say that. And Chris, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's been great to meet you.
Thank you so much, Robin. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.